All right, so Eric, you are pretty much one of the big reasons that's we're even here today. So tell me why Jim Kelly was such a mentor to you, such an incredible man that you wanted to put this whole event together.
Well, because he inspired me. From a very young man growing up in New Orleans, I grew up in a housing project, and I was very, very angry as a young kid. And I got into karate, and karate helped a little bit, but it didn't inspire me. It wasn't until I saw the movie Into the Dragon, and I heard him say, "Man, you come right out of a comic book." And that right there sort of like transformed my life. That was the beginning of a new me in martial arts. Somebody who was in martial arts who was not just doing a kicking and punching, but somebody who's inspired to be the very best, so I can be like Jim one day. So I won the All-South National Karate Championship 3 years after I saw that movie, because I began to start emulating him, emulating his moves, his techniques, and everything like that. So that's what happened. He inspired me, you know. And so for me, he means the world. He's like a father figure to me before I even met him. You know what I mean? I didn't grow up with a father, so, you know, you have these images of what your father would be like, you know, how you could, you know, do certain things. And by me being in karate, I adopted him really as a like surrogate father.
No, he was a big trailblazer in the sense that, you know, one of the first African Americans to be in martial art movies, especially a mainstream one. Did he kind of make it cool to be African American and do martial arts?
Yeah, more than anything else, because we're talking about the early 70s, you know, say it loud, I'm black, you know, so all of those things was going on. So you got to understand what was going on when Jim was coming up as well. You know, there was a transformation of the afro, and everything is being proud and being self-confident of who you are, and being proud of who you are, you know. So he, you know, when he did Black Belt Jones, that was like a major thing. He blocked police officers and drove off with the car. Everybody like, no, nobody do nothing like that. You know, it's movies, but the point is it just inspired us, you know. And so he inspired a whole generation. I know what he did for me. And so when he passed, I talked to his wife, and she didn't want to have any services. So I said, okay, I respect that, and I won't do anything. And I did exactly what she asked. But I said, I do have to do a tribute, you know, and I wanted to do a tribute in his area where he became who he is. So even though I live in New Orleans, you know, I came up here and spent 2 weeks, and I engaged with people who love Jim, who want Jim, who respect Jim. And as you see, we have a great showing, full house to capacity. And so that's a blessing within itself.
You got to work with Bruce Lee in one of the historic films. It was one of the last Bruce Lee films. What was his kind of reaction working with Bruce Lee, and what were some of the things he said being able to work with Bruce Lee?
Well, one of the things that he always shared with me, and I'm glad you asked that question, because for the last 5 years, he and I were very intimate in terms of conversation. We would be up 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning talking, and I constantly remind Jim, like, you know, 3 o'clock for you is 5 o'clock for me, right? You know, but sometimes when he get off and talk about him, he just goes off. But one of the things he said about Bruce, he said he was the baddest karate guy he ever met. And for somebody who's the international karate champion to say that, it is just powerful. You know what I mean? And so that was the thing that I know that he respect Bruce Lee a whole lot. He admired Bruce Lee. And I have a picture when he and Bruce Lee was talking on the side that I cherish more, because by him giving me this inside information on what he felt about Bruce Lee, I know that Bruce Lee was probably the greatest martial artist of all time, because in my mind it was Jim, you know what I mean? But when he said to me, hey, look, I'm good, but Bruce is good, you know? And we know as black belts, there's different levels of a black belt. There's black belts who are good, and then there's black belts who are like, you know, hey, he's good, you know? And when he gave me that about Bruce, I went, I respect it, you know what I mean? And so that was the most powerful thing in my life. And then from there, after I met him, you know, he really changed my life, because he got me to look at things a little differently. He and I had a lot of the same philosophies and principles about life. So I really loved it. I really loved him.
Lastly, you know, it's been 40 years since Bruce has passed. Now it's been a month since Jim Kelly has passed. What does that kind of mean for martial arts? Like, what kind of loss did it take? I mean, of course the sport's going to move on, but, you know, whenever any, you know, genre loses such greats, I mean, what does the sport kind of do?
Well, first of all, we mourn, then we get over it, and then we rejoice, and then we celebrate. And that's what I'm doing today. I'm celebrating Jim. I ain't crying. I'm talking about the greatness, the spirit, the tenacity, the power, the inspiration that he gave generations. And what I want to do is I want to make sure that generations that's coming have that same opportunity to see those type people who would inspire. Not somebody who beat somebody up and all this type of stuff, but people who would inspire the next generation. And that's the reason why I'm interested now for the very first time after hanging with Jim of doing movies, but doing movies like Jim did that inspire other children.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. We know you have to go host the event, so thank you for taking the time to talk with us. It's going to be an amazing event.
It will be, and thank you so much. Thank you.